Welcome everyone to Trek Central Weekly, where we'll be talking about the latest Star Trek Picard Season 3 episode 2, Disengage, and it was so dense of an episode. We have a lot to talk about. I'm your host, Dom Paris, assistant editor here at Trek Central, and as Jack refers to me, Lawmaster. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, and I am joined by the one and only Sohail. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. And chat, let us know how you're doing. There is also a poll, which I've just put up in chat, of just some options of what your favorite scene
let's see how it's doing. It's very interesting.
Yes.
The results so far. Vote in that poll, guys.
I've seen some other options in chat. We have Joel talking about Worf's entrance and the Klingon theme, which is very good. I should have put the blaster beam being in this episode because I adore the blaster beam as a musical instrument. It's so good. But yeah, first off, let's get your just general thought of this episode, because we'll be getting into the minutiae of this episode. So Sohail, how did you find this episode?
I was thrilled. As you know, I got to see it as presented as one feature
premiere,
length thing. So but then rewatching them week to week now, it's the thrill is not lost at all. So if anyone's curious, I don't think you're missing out on too much if you don't watch it. But also, it's fun to watch them back to back now. But getting to the point, it's still as thrilling as it was, and it was such a good kind of, for me, I personally enjoyed the performances a lot, especially the performances of the TNG cast, and they're just on fire. Like Jonathan Frakes, Sir Patrick Stewart, of course, and then just the brief moment of what we get with Gates McFadden, like it's just like so good. But not only that, like the performances of all the newcomers are delightful as well. Like I'm really enjoying, Captain Shaw. Like I'm enjoying.
So here's one thing I want to ask you about Captain Shaw. So obviously you watched both episodes back to back at the premiere. For a lot of us who watched episode 1 last week and then episode 2 this week, episode 1, everybody was in unanimous agreement. Shaw sucks. He is, he's the person you love to hate. Episode 2 gave us a lot more nuance with Shaw. There is still that bigotry in the first episode which still needs to be addressed. But we've come to understand him more as a character. He cares about the safety of his crew. So how did it feel watching them back to back straight away instead of having to wait a week with Shaw?
So yeah, the payoff of like knowing that maybe affirming some of my suspicions from from the earlier part, episode 1, that like maybe there's more to it. That's the kind of thing that's the only difference, is you kind of get that instantaneously. But I think episode 1 does, or we'll call it part 1, because
is a 10-part movie basically.
It's true.
Yep.
So what I think part 1, in the even in seeing it in the theater back to back, during part 1 the feelings are the same. You just hate this guy. You're like, this guy's a total d-bag,
yes.
He's awful. But then in part 2, obviously again my payoff was like within an hour. Everyone else had to wait a week, but that payoff is there because I think for me especially, I love the Starfleet type, the lore, the chain of command stuff, the naval aspect of it. It is really fun, and it gives you like an instant understanding of like who's the authority and stuff like that. And so, in part 1, after seeing it, after having seen it and having thought about it, I also had that same experience that I think I've seen a lot of people have, which is like, well, technically Shaw's not wrong. He's just delivering it in a way that isn't polite.
Definitely. Some things I do want to point out from the chat before we truly get into all the details of this
episode,
is, a lot of people asking about the blaster beam. It's the same twang that Vija has from the motion picture, I think made by Craig Huxley. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I think that was his name. And yeah, I adore the blaster beam. It's one of my favorite instruments. So the fact that that's back is great.
Then I think perfected by, or kind of, and I can't remember his name right now, but it's the actor who played Captain Kirk's nephew in the original series.
Okay.
That actor is like the foremost expert performer of the blaster beam.
Well, I'm sure there's not a lot of performers of the blaster beam. So it might be a short list, but still being the best performer of it.
But I think he's credited with having innovated it and using it for cinema in some way. And so he's also was consulted, if I'm not mistaken, on Star Trek Picard.
That's very good.
To do, if I'm not mistaken.
Very nice. Okay, we have a super chat from Sean Casey. Thank you very much for £5. Said, another great episode. When you discuss the Shrike, did you notice how its deflector looks very Galaxy class? Hope we get space battles. Great space battles. And yes, we'll be talking about the Shrike. I will note, however, it's been discussed on Twitter and stuff. It's, it kind of has the vibe of a Galaxy class deflector, but it isn't. It is probably just the weapon, which is mounted in its primary position. It does have some differences to the deflector of the Galaxy class. It is more yellow and more glowing than the more metallic orange with the blue accents of the Galaxy class. But the Shrike is a lovely design.
But the overall vibe, there is one shot where I was like, oh, I can kind of see that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We also had some people talking about the chain of command between Shaw and Picard. How come Picard was able to, as a retired admiral, be like, belay that order? There's a lot of different ways, I would say, to interpret that scene. Obviously, Picard is still the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. He still has some power. He doesn't have formal power, but he still has gravitas. He still has... People will still listen to him. Also, we've got the fact that Shaw goes along with it. He doesn't really be like, yeah, don't belay that order. If he said, okay, don't listen to that order, and we saw who they followed, we would understand how it works. But Starfleet has a lot of very interesting aspects with active and reserve and retired people. Riker was able to come back immediately in season 1.
Oh, that's right.
There is some interesting stuff there. But, we have to thank you all for being in chat. Keep giving us your comments. We'll pick some of them out. And also, as we mentioned, there is a poll for your favorite things in the episode. Yeah.
Someone put it a good way, and I think this might be a little, hyperbolic, but I think it makes a good point. Like if Lord Admiral Nelson was on your ship, even though he was retired, and he suddenly said, belay that order,
you would probably listen to him.
Yeah. It probably carries a weight, regardless of, and we can't, underplay Jean-Luc's significance and his, importance in all of these people were probably, he's on the his face is still on the recruitment manual or whatever brochure, as Raffi says in season 1.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. So I think first off, we should discuss the main aspect of this episode, and that is Jack Crusher. But I think if we are going to talk about Jack Crusher, we do have to talk about that specific scene between Beverly and Picard. Sohail, how did you feel that scene, watching it on the big cinema, seeing the acting of Gates McFadden and Patrick Stewart?
It was an incredible moment to experience, and a very emotional moment. Like the floodgate of tears just started, opened up, and tears started flowing, and you could hear sniffles across the whole theater. It was really powerful. But I think that I'm looking for part of the big thing I'm looking for is to see all of these beloved cast members get like their proper kind of dues and their proper kind of moments on screen. And so seeing it in the theater, is much the same as seeing it now, like, which I've watched this episode like about 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
we both watched it an hour before
yeah,
the stream.
we just watched it an hour before. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's fresh in our minds.
But it's very personal for me because like I grew up with these actors. They're, to me, like I like to hopefully jokingly say that I've developed a psychosis even where the characters are so real to me, So it's very melodramatic and perhaps like kind of like if you're not as invested in these characters, it could just be seen as that. But to me, it's very profound, and I think it's one of the great moments. It's going to be known as one of the great moments, I predict, in Star Trek is when Beverly and Jean-Luc saw
definitely.
One another again.
Because they
after
had,
20-some-odd years.
you can tell the conversation these two characters had without them talking. Beverly said something, then you see the reaction of Picard, it was just so well acted. And how Patrick Stewart portrayed Picard in a lot of this episode is so fantastic. You have the scenes where he's in a turbo lift with Riker and he's sort of getting uncomfortable about what Riker is suggesting. Oh, it could be your son. I do the math, Jean-Luc. When
not making eye contact with Jack. Yeah.
Not making eye contact with Jack in the brig.
The brig scene.
And then, just pulling the Band-Aid off, who was your father? I've never had one. Someone in the chat did mention why didn't they bioscan Jack, and also why is he called Jack? We can look at TNG for at least the first one, which is there's been previous episodes, Bloodlines, I believe the episode was called in season 7, where they did a bioscan of someone who said he was Picard's son, and it came up that he was Picard's son, but he wasn't.
That's
His
Jason
DNA
Vigo.
had just been altered. Why is he called Jack Crusher? Because even though Jack R. Crusher was Beverly's former husband and father to Wesley Crusher, he was also the best friend of Jean-Luc.
I wonder what the R is.
I think it's Richard.
Why would it be Richard?
Because
I was guessing
I think his father. No, as in the husband was Jack R. Crusher, not this Crusher.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
That's how we distinguish the two. You could say Jack Crusher Senior and Jack Crusher Junior, but it doesn't really work when it's like
because he's not the father.
He's not the father, so it's exactly. Jack R. Crusher and Jack Crusher.
Jack Crusher.
But Jack Crusher and Picard knew each other longer, I believe, than Beverly. I think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it seems to be the reference because Walker Keel, one of Picard's friends, is the one that introduced Beverly to Jack to Beverly, and Walker Keel was Picard's friend first, I think. That is how I view the timeline of Jack R. Crusher. But yeah, I absolutely adored the scene between Beverly and Picard. But as we said, a lot of scenes, I think with Picard as the focus, as the core of this episode, really sold home just what he was feeling. Riker continues to do a fantastic job, Jonathan Frakes. And there was just so many performances. And even if we look at Ed Spielers, who plays Jack Crusher, from the very first scene in which we get him on the Ilios, which is a Mariposa medical vessel, which I absolutely adore. It just shows how this season is honoring previous seasons and retroactively, in my opinion, making them better and stronger as a whole. We'll get more on that as we talk about Raffi. But how...
Which is what happens when you start to kind of like close in on the ending of a story, right? Like, which is so nice.
As a great storyteller, picking up all those threads and weaving them into an excellent tapestry.
Right.
But how he's portrayed in those first scenes as this con man with a silver tongue, he smiles in a way in which you believe him, you trust him. okay, I'll take this bribe. It's chill. It's so strong. And there's just so many good performances in this. Were there any specifically Jack Crusher scenes in this episode which really resonated with you?
Gosh, like all of them, I feel like for me, he's he's my new space husband, by the way. So hopefully he survives, because they killed Garvik.
At this point?
What's that?
Yeah. The 27th at this point, if I'm counting correctly.
I think so. I think we're in the 30s actually. Unfortunately, because
okay,
like most of my previous space husbands were red shirts, so they got killed.
Yes.
I have a really good feeling that Jack. Jack may make it through, but no one's safe.
Yes.
I was gonna say before I wanted to talk about Jack, but it also kind of relates. Going back to that scene, where Beverly and Jean-Luc see one another again. I saw, and I didn't catch this when I watched it, but I saw on the internet, on Twitter, that and I don't remember the username of the person that put it together visually, but a lot of people caught it, which is, it was a reference to the first time Beverly and Jean-Luc see each other after not seeing each other after a long time.
I saw that.
In Encounter at Farpoint.
Yeah.
And so it was once I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, duh. Because that is a powerful scene too, and it's very similar. They kind of have this exchange that's a non-verbal. They have a non-verbal moment, and then she starts.
And
talking,
also, both of those scenes are Beverly introducing Picard to her son, and in Encounter at Farpoint, it's introducing Picard to his best friend's son, and in this, it's introducing him to his own son. It's still weird, but that's cool how you can see these narrative moments,
threads, or connections
with former Trek, not just season 1 and season 2 of Picard, but also of the Next Generation, and hopefully we'll get more with Voyager, DS9, Enterprise, all the other shows. One thing I do want to say of talking about the first scene with Jack Crusher is, one, the Mariposa medical ship, which we kind of brought up, but the fact that Rios's impact, he may be gone from the season. I think we put out
and
a short.
Dr. Teresa as
Ramirez.
Well, I love that.
I think her last name was.
Yeah, Dr. Ramirez. Sorry, Teresa Ramirez.
Yeah. But we did a short on the channel if you're interested in like a 40-second summation of my thoughts on that.
Are those on TikTok too? Because I watched I love the TikTok stuff.
They should be. I'm not sure
cool.
because I don't have TikTok, so I haven't checked if they are.
Dom Paris needs a TikTok just to lock it down.
No, maybe. But how the Fenris Ranger ships in that scene are very similar in design to Seven's Fenris Ranger ship in season 1, but with a different nacelle configuration. As in more.
That was cool.
Sorry, I think I've got hiccups. An older style nacelle configuration that's more like circular, more TOS than it is TNG, and now this Picard era. But there's just a lot of things which really nicely connect to former Trek, and we love to see it in one of these new shows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite scene with Ed Spilliers was with him was the brig scene between he and Sir Patrick. The performance was very good. Like that moment when he says, I had no father," and he kind of raises his voice for the first time, like in a very like kind of like "don't ask me about that" kind of way. And Jean-Luc's reaction, like feeling the kind of, you could almost see in Sir Patrick's face performance as Jonathan Frakes probably teased him about, but like in his facial performance, you could definitely see the guilt of not knowing his son, the person who was potentially his son. Because I think Jean-Luc is still, he does tell Will, like, don't speculate. I think he understands the possibility, and I think he feels it.
I think they understood the possibility with their looks in episode 1 of just, they did the maths.
Right.
You
Right.
Ed Spielers is like 30 something, but I think there was a recent interview in which he said that Jack was 23 to 24, so it will be around Nemesis time that Jack was born. I think I saw a comment by
that makes
Jill
sense.
in the comments in the live chat, which I will not mention. So if you want to see what Jill said, which is something, look in the live chat earlier.
Now I'm like totally going in there.
But yeah, one thing I want to then segue into talking about these connections into previous Trek is all the Raffi scenes in this episode, because I think that Michelle Hurd is really selling Raffi as a character and is being given really good stuff, which when we went into the series we were told that, oh, Raffi's kind of been reimagined, but I actually disagree with that, even though it was the showrunner that said that. In the fact that a lot of what Raffi is doing is related to her backstory in season 1. In her backstory in season 1, she was a intelligence analyst in Romulan affairs, and then she lost her family because she was too obsessed with finding out the truth, finding out the conspiracy for the greater good. And that was the backstory for season 1. However, for this particular episode repeats that backstory, but does it actively in the plot. We have her meeting Jay, her former husband of and father of Gabe, who we met in season 1. And Jay is very much the Gabe character for this season, bringing in Raffi's backstory back into the plot. But I think with Jay, it's done way more effective than it did with Gabe, because Jay is more actively giving her the choice of, I can let you have this conspiracy. I can give you the contact of Snead, who, again, great name for a Ferengi. I can give you the Snead's contact details, or you can forget all this, and you can be a mother, you can be a grandmother to probably your grandchild that you haven't even met yet. Whereas in season 1, it was Gabe very much being, if you give up the conspiracy, you can be my mom. Whereas in this,
right,
if Gabe had a link to the conspiracy in season 1, it would be as heavy and emotionally tangible as it is in this episode, which I really love. I do have to somewhat question how Jay of Earth has contacts with a Ferengi mob boss. You kind of, while we're watching this before the stream, you kind of convinced me that, you work on Metalis Prime, you kind of have to know those connections to work there.
It's also, and like, I feel like, everyone on the production team is calling it a wretched hive of scum and villainy. So, exactly. Metalis Prime is not operating within Federation. It's in the gray area. It's
I do see some people in chat being like, Jay's ultimatum was bad. Why did he offer her that choice? But I think it does, you could say it's abusive, you could say he's not doing the right thing because he doesn't know how big these conspiracies are. But to Jay, that doesn't matter how big the conspiracy is. It's a choice also of whether you do the greater good for society or you do the greater good for your family, which is what Raffi has to deal with.
Jay's perspective also is kind of, maybe it's a litmus test to see, because from his perspective, Raffi is, has issues shaking drugs. Which he even mentioned. She's like, hey, like, why was it so easy for you, Jay? Like, what was it about? What was it that you focused on that made you like kind of give up that kind of destructive lifestyle? Because she obviously didn't, and she's in a good place right now, but she struggles still. We see that in earlier in the episode, and again, that's as you had said, that's consistent also with Raffi's journey throughout season 1, and also, to see her kind of like continue to address that in season 2. So to me, it was like maybe Jay's perspective is that like from his perspective, Raffi's like an unstable person who is chasing conspiracy theories. So to truly see if she's like where her head is, like he gave her that choice to see where it is. And so maybe it wasn't coming from like a place of necessarily like complete, anger or abuse, but more of a like, I'm protecting my son and my family, so here's like a choice, and let me see what your answer is, and that'll give me what I need to know in a very quick time.
Very much.
Whether it's right or wrong is debatable.
I think that's what's great about it, is that we can all have this discussion on it. But I do want to mention we have got another super chat from Valamist for £5. So thank you very much. Who said, I love what they have given Raffi. I was worried she would be left out in favour of the TNG cast, but she has a proper arc linked to what we saw in S1. And yeah, I very much agree. It was a big worry for the season that they got rid of... Okay, there's notification. It was a big worry going into the series that they kind of got rid of all their Picard cast just for their TNG cast, and it's going to be TNG Season 8. And we don't want that. We kind of want Picard Season 3 because that's the show we have. But how they are weaving both of them together, and obviously we do have Worf coming in as Raffi's handler, as a lot of people theorized from last episode. I think it's connected it very well. So I guess then we do have to talk about Worf, because that's a really good segue.
Yes.
How did you find Worf's
appearance? There's so much to talk about. It's so
there's so much. There's Snead to talk about. Like, yeah.
There's still Snead. Yeah. I loved Worf's appearance. And to me, he looks like to me, whatever a Dahar master is supposed to look like, that's what Worf looks like to me. So he looked pretty awesome. And then I was delighted to see in an interview, and I think it was TV Line or I forget which. I've seen so many interviews. I'm sorry, but I was delighted to see that someone said that Michael Dorn had referenced the character in Kill Bill, yes. The kind of like
the master.
Is it Pei Mei?
Yeah,
Master Pei Mei, right?
It's some name like that. Yes,
something like that. Anyways, so that was the kind of vibe, and you see it, and I kind of think it's delightful because you see that in his like kind of demeanor at least, and like how there's a reference to pacifism that's very curious. So yes. Obviously we don't know much more about Worf at this point, but I'm very excited to see what we're going to get. But obviously,
talking about pacifism, he definitely isn't a pacifist, because he just murdered 4 people. And I do have to question his priority of killing Snead. I can understand killing the guards, but killing Snead, who probably is a good source of information for whatever conspiracy Raffi is uncovering, and as the handler he's helping her with, killing that source of information probably wasn't the right call, and you'd probably just have incapacitated him or like chopped his leg off. But
I have some reasoning to present. I have some reasoning to present. Like, so Raffi didn't follow her orders and she didn't disengage, so like Worf wasn't prepared as prepared as he maybe capturing Snead was like in the plan somehow, right? So Raffi kind of, by not like listening, like pushes things forward, so he has to go in and intervene himself. He might have been on the planet somewhere at a remote location, like nearby, but just like kind of keeping her focused or what have you, right? So he comes in and he has to make a decision because she's incapacitated, so he can't subdue Snead and carry her out of the club without suspicion and people following and like successfully do it. So he has to make a decision. So he says, I'm just going to kill all the witnesses so that there is no Snead going back to the higher ups. You know what I mean? It's very Klingon. And
also it's very in keeping with Worf's character, actually, because when we consider on the mission where they were meeting a Cardassian informant, and he was like, okay, I'm going to let that informant die to save Jadzia. And obviously that was, that's my wife. But this is this is the person I am
kind of handling.
Yeah.
He's in charge of her. Like,
so I guess you could
yeah.
go in that. Yeah, he's responsible for Raffi, and he's like, I'm just trying to let this person die. There'll be enough ways to get information, and
Yeah,
we won the Dominion War. We'll win this. It's fine.
Also, it's all on Raffi because he could be like later on. I'm just speculating at this point. But or this. Well, okay. Actually, I'm not going to speculate further. It's never mind. I'm just going to say like that's my headcanon based on some conversations I've had. So, but yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, overall, he just looks so badass, and that sword, what is it called? The Kurleth is pretty badass. Yes. Yeah, the Kurleth. I like that they're introducing a new blade or a new kind of Klingon weapon.
And it was designed by Dan Curry, the designer of the Batleth.
Of the Batleth, yeah. So it's pretty cool. So,
yeah, it's cool. Also, I guess I do want to just address this because I've seen still a lot of comments about this. Why is Worf white-haired? Klingons age slower than humans. I know 20-year-olds that have white hair. We don't know species all ages the same. Worf just seems to have the genes of he gets grey hairs quicker than other Klingons. That's how.
Also, now that, again, this is all, of course, headcanon-y type stuff, but now that we know about places like the temple, the Time Temple, the Borth Monastery, and we know that we know that Worf likes to pursue spiritual kind of journeys as well. There could be an off-camera in the last 20 years. There's nothing to say he couldn't have experienced some kind of cool adventure on Boreth where he had to go and like deal with time crystals, and it aged him a little more than he should.
I would say there isn't a reason for that. Obviously, you can have a story like that, but there isn't a reason. There isn't. You don't need a story to explain why he's got white hair.
Right, I agree with that as well. Yes,
he's
I'm just saying. If you're having a problem with it, just imagine Boreth.
Also, I think it was someone in chat who said that he had grey hair in All Good Things. So
that's right.
When was All Good Things set? Timeline wise, it's around.
I think around now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is what it is. I do want to bring back up Snead, because Snead has become a fan favorite character I have found on Twitter.
Yeah, and may I just say that it was a delight on multiple levels, because I love 12 Monkeys. I know you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But so the main character in the show, the character's name is James Cole. And in an earlier scene, we see that Jack Crusher was using James Cole as one of his aliases. And then the actor who plays James Cole on 12 Monkeys, Aaron Stanford, is the same actor who plays Snead. So we get the actual James Cole. We got the reference to James Cole earlier, and then we get the actor later in the episode. But it goes a little deeper, which is something I love about, why not do this? If you're 12 Monkeys is clearly Terry Matalas and his writing team's baby, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's their thing from the ground up.
Exactly.
I mean, there was a movie, but it's their thing from ground up. One thing I do want to bring up.
The drug is called Splinter, which the Splinter project is the whole thing in 12 Monkeys, so it's pretty cool that comes up as a reference here. And those are the only ones that I caught. I'm sure there's more.
Sure there's
others. Todd Stashwick in general is just the 12 Monkeys reference.
We do have Connor in chat. They do some of our Easter egg videos on these episodes on our website, so if you're interested in looking at them, go to trekcentral.net. But they say that Snead drops Section 31. Do you have any thoughts as to if that's gonna turn out to be anything? And I'm gonna say no, just because it's common knowledge that Section 31 exists at this point. I saw some people being like, that's confirmation that Raffi's working for Section 31. I don't think Snead can smell if someone's Section 31, and also we know Raffi's not Section 31. She's Starfleet Intelligence. She said that, and I don't think there's enough time with everything that's going on in this season to then bring in Section 31, but we'll see. But I hope it isn't Section 31 in this case.
I think also in general, like just like we're all like people were always dropping things like CIA Black Ops or whatever, right? Like as just a reference if someone's acting shady or suspicious. Like I think it's just him like letting Raffi know like, oh yeah, you don't seem like who you say you are. You seem more like a Section 31 agent or something like that. I also agree with you, Dom, that Section 31, if it doesn't come up beyond that reference, like it would actually be refreshing because Starfleet Intelligence is a huge intelligence organization.
And to get more Starfleet Intelligence, it's nice.
Yeah, and I like that they highlight more, and I also like that Raffi would be working for Starfleet Intelligence. I don't think she's crossed the line into some of the nefarious things you have to do.
No.
Chuck
A in chat said that Quark, Morn, Brunt, and O'Connor were featured in Snead's bio, which is really cool. I also saw someone previously mention, I think we mentioned it in the last live stream, that on Raffi's profile it said that she stalked Admiral Janeway. So there is more of her conspiracy leading into bad behavior. But yeah, and there was another comment by Seal saying, I liked that Snead wasn't a disco redesign Ferengi. And to be honest, that Ferengi is probably just a mix of other species because it's the 32nd century. A lot of people probably came together to make that style of Ferengi. But it is nice to see this style of Ferengi. Apparently he was meant to have more like prison tattoos than he did originally in some concepts. But he had the like Last Outpost style Ferengi tattoo as well as another tattoo. And we saw that he served in a Federation penal facility. So there's just so many Easter eggs, and we can talk about, he brings out Sluggo Cola, he has rules of acquisitions on his shelf. I think there was a baseball, which, could be Cisco's. Who knows?
He's got like piercings, he's got a chunk bitten off of his, or cut off of his ear.
Did he have piercings?
He's got like... Yeah, he's like got these like piercings on his ear on the side, yeah.
That's cool.
Which Jörg Hildebrand on Twitter suggested that would that be similar to a Prince Albert? So that's it for Ferengi.
And we have the test using the drugs was cringy. I don't agree with that because actually it was quite smart from Snead. Because one, that person wants to prove themselves, so they'll do it. And two, it'll incapacitate them. So it's a win-win for him because he convinces someone to do it. So I thought that was very good from Snead to do that. And we have Toluco, the Romulan. Did it mention the Romulan Free States with Toluco? I thought it did, but I'm trying to remember if it did or not, or if I just made that up. I can't remember.
I liked the way the underworld was. I've been thinking about this actually a little bit, but now that you brought up all these like shady characters in one kind of sentence,
it
is really done in a. We've seen these like kind of shorter examples, but this feels really rich. Like I got a good sense of like there's this like crime syndicate or whatever. But I wonder if Quark's involved in all this. Like his name comes up next to some of these guys.
And we know that Quark has had dealings with shady people.
That's true. That's
weapon
a good point.
stealers.
Yeah.
That one.
Oh yeah, it's a great point.
I think Nautican, which he got to the station.
He wasn't above a lot of ethically, questionable things.
Yeah,
either,
and
like,
probably
using likeness.
after Rom became the Nagus and set up and continued all the reforms that Zek had set into place, a lot of those Ferengi probably left Ferenginar and are now, slumming it out in Metalis Prime because it's better than the place where, women can now wear clothes. Oh my god. Classic Ferengis.
Right.
Quark tried to draw the line here, but it didn't work. Because he didn't become Nagus, it was Rom. Uh, there's just
Very well done.
there's just so much in this episode. I
But yeah,
think yeah, go on.
I no, I'm really glad we spent time at Metalis Prime. I was a little worried
Yes.
about Metalis Prime at first, but yeah, Metalis Prime turned out to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and for those who haven't seen, there is a lot of behind-the-scenes pictures of Metalis Prime, specifically District 6, because we know District 7 was just Brazil with some stuff over it. But District 6, yeah, there's a lot of shots by Dave Blass,
Yeah.
Kit Stollen, I believe their name is, the art director who focused on Mentalis Prime, whereas some of the other art directors worked on Ilios, for example. But there was a lot.
Oh, that's another thing that's
Mentalis
cool.
Prime.
We spoke about All Good Things and referencing how like Worf had gray hair to kind of justify his hair
Yeah.
in the Prime timeline, if you will. And that's another thing that was cool about Dr. Crusher's introduction here. When we meet her in All Good Things in this like potential future, she's the captain of a ship, a medical vessel. It's the Pasteur, and even though she's a pirate now, a Mariposa
Well,
pirate,
not a pirate,
she's still
just a doctor without border.
Yes, I know, I'm
Yeah.
teasing. But,
Yeah.
but even though she's like not in Starfleet, she still has her own ship, and it still is doing the purpose that we saw her kind of committed to, which is medical, right? Like, so
Yeah,
it's
because
neat to see
in
her.
All Good Things, she was supplying medical aid to Romulan refugees
I
because of the
believe so,
Klingon
yeah.
Empire had invaded, which is cool. But yeah, if you haven't seen, there's a lot of posts out there on Metalis Prime. A lot of cool stuff, references to all the little shops there. There's a Tellarite butcher, which has like pig heads in the back, so I really hope he's a cannibal, because that would just be great and fun. I think there's some Binars there, Orion places, all these different places, which they put up signs so the extras would know, okay, this is this place, so if you're dressed up as an Orion, maybe hang around this place, because an Orion would want, authentic Orion food, maybe. And just things like that, and it just fleshes out the world. So I'm glad that we've had this look at Metalis Prime, mentioned all the way back in Star Trek Enterprise as this bad place, in honor of then like associate producer or assistant producer Terry Metalis. And now that he's a showrunner, it wasn't even him apparently who said, hey, we need a CD Underworld, let's do Metalis Prime. He just was like, we need a CD Underworld. And once the writers was like, I know just the one, and you're gonna hate it. So that's how we got Metalis Prime.
Yeah, it's turned out to be a pretty cool idea. And if we do get a Section 31 kind of series, which I think there could be a series. I think there could be a series, this proposed Star Trek Legacy type series that is set in the 25th century that could give us the best of all those kinds of requests. Like, there's no reason why you can't have like bits. You could, let's just say my favorite character, Elnor, could come back and be part of the Starfleet Academy storyline. You could have
I mean, that's a good point if you have it in like 4 episode chunks. And just
like every episode, every season just focuses on these 3 different characters, and then like through them we see like you see one that's like straight up in Starfleet
universe. Yes,
yeah, so you see the one character that's straight up in Starfleet, one character's at the Academy, and the other one's in like Starfleet Intelligence, which can cross over with Section 31 stuff, and so I kind of like that.
Look at that. We have another super chat from Veritas for
thank you, Veritas.
$19.99, who has just said thanks for being you. And to that, I just have to say thanks for being you, and thanks for supporting the channel. Because of you, because of everyone in chat, we can do the things that we do. So we thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. If you do have a message, just put it in chat, and I'll read it out. I'll make sure to keep an eye on you if your name pops up. But thank you very much. We very much support that here at Trek Central. Okay. No, I thought that was another super chat, but it was just apparently the super chat sound repeats after a while. But I think we do have to move on to one of my favorite new characters, and that is Vadic, played by Amanda Plummer. Because she, oh my god, she performs so well in this episode, and I just adore her performance. How the very like hushed tones, the giggling, the laughing, the speeches. I love her speech on, we haven't used timepieces for a while, but you can still hear the tick-tock of passing seconds. Is so good. And how, she threatens them with, oh yeah, do you want to know the name of my ship? It's about a carrion bird called the Shrike, which, if anyone is interested, I do somewhat recommend searching up Shrike. Just content warning, they are terrible birds. It's a good name for an evil ship. I will give you that.
It really is. Also, it does send the message home of what a Shrike, like what that ship might
actual birds on Earth actually like impale their prey on spikes. It's just like, I did not need to see that. But yeah, just being like, oh yeah, these are all my weapons, and they're like, oh, you have isolytic weaponry? That's not good. And probably the quantum tunneling weapon, which was stolen from Daystrom. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff.
And the design is reminiscent of like the Narada a little bit, but even there's like aspects of it that remind me of Nemesis and what was the ship called? The Scimitar. Yeah, so I'm wondering if the ship has Romulan origins, but then on the interiors, I'm seeing like Sona.
Well, I think from the exterior,
it's like,
I would say Sona.
There's also Sona vibes on the exterior too, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah,
and I would say there's more Sona vibes on the exterior than there are Romulan, because the only thing that connects Romulan to the Shrike is it kind of looks like the Narada, and the only reason why the Narada looks like that is because of Borg technology. And you get into a whole, is the Narada design Romulan or is the Narada design Borg? You get a lot of stuff like that, and I don't think it's because the Narada is a lot of prongs in no direction and it's very asymmetrical, whereas this is very symmetrical, more Sona-like.
Right, so it's more like Sona. The Scimitar or the Sona. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. But anyway, she how many like crazy weapons did she have aboard? Like, did you
like 500 photon torpedoes, a lot of plasma torpedoes, a lot of isolytic warheads.
Isolytic? Yeah. Oh my gosh, like it's crazy. Like it's like a nutso ship. And I like that Seven knew about the ship. Like there's rumors, and Shaw's an interesting captain. Again, not my style of captaining, but like he does, like, even though he's rude about it again, where he's like, you're pirate types or whatever he says, to Seven, but he is like asking good questions. Like he's asking Seven, like, like about the ship and stuff like that.
This episode definitely gives more credence to just Shaw being, why is he a captain? He may be a dick and hard to work with, but he still looks after his crew.
What's funny? Yeah. There's like an appetite for that because a lot of people like Jellicoe, right? Yeah. And it's a similar kind of style, right? Like,
and actually, I wonder how Jellicoe would have been like if it wasn't Troy on the bridge, but it was like Seven on the bridge. That's always a question which we'll probably never know the answer, but it's always interesting to talk about.
Hopefully Jellicoe becomes a more prominent character in Star Trek Prodigy, because we can at least glean more insight into his like mind state, at least as of this close relative era, like nearby in the last 20 years or whatever. So and
I just adored I adore so much of this episode. It's just really good. I love all the
characters.
characters.
We haven't really given any critiques, have we?
No, I mean, I have some critiques, but I don't know if I even want to say that, because I think I'd have more fun talking about
the
what I love
other great
than
stuff. Yeah,
just
it's true.
criticizing all the nitpicks which I may have, because I do love this episode, and we're already coming up on an hour.
I do want to say something.
Yeah.
Terry Metalis, his most common tweet that I've seen, he answers a lot of questions on Twitter, and his most common reply has been, "Just watch, it'll get explained."
Yeah.
So
I think one of the most ones about that is, why is Jack speaking British? But
right. I know the answer I'm trying to say, but I can't say anything. I love seeing all the people.
He probably just watched a lot of Peppa Pig as a child. Beverly just put it on. It's something that they recovered from World War III. It'll work.
I affected a British accent for a year.
Oh no.
but I like Madonna.
Oh, bless.
But also, when I was a child, I had a British tinge to my accent because my parents both were raised speaking, I guess now it would be called the King's English, because that's how they were raised in Pakistan.
Oh, no, that's so weird if you now call it King's English. I'm so used to Queen's English. Ah, bless. But yeah, there's a lot of I do want to still talk about Vadic and the Shrike. Obviously, at the top of the episode with Sean Casey saying how, it looks like it has a galaxy deflector on it. But I really love the ship shots we got in this. I love how the Shrike just threw a ship at the Titan, the Helios. I would have liked if we saw more of the damage on the Titan. It didn't. I don't think it sold that enough. You did have Seven being like, oh yeah, it tore a hole in the hull on deck 11. But you don't know how big that hole is. You don't know if it just made a dent in the hull or if it actually ripped an entire deck up. So that would have been nice to see, but we can't all see everything. Also, I do have to say, talking about seeing things, for those of you who probably don't know, when this episode first came out, there were some colouring contrast issues, or oversaturation. I don't know the technical terms. So if you did watch it then, I highly recommend that you watch it again, because you can then actually see some things in better quality than it was originally put up. In our review, it did reflect this, so just discount that if you watch our review on that. But yeah, and also just talking about like interior, like you said, kind of sonar light. It's so wild when you look at that and be like, oh my god, that's the La Sirena downstairs.
La Sirena, yeah. Until you told me, it hadn't even really dawned on me. It kind of like, I know I had read it or heard it somewhere, but I was like, when we were watching, I was like, oh yeah, I can see it now. But it's really they've really redressed the set well, because it kind of has, like, and the angles they're shooting it at. One thing that's so cool is Amanda Plummer, like, she's got, again, another interesting, like, neat thing is that Amanda Plummer is playing the villain of the season, or one of the villains of the season, because there's a lot of speculation that perhaps
Moriarty,
there's,
like,
there's a lot more. Yeah, it's like a rogues gallery, if you will. But the thing that's cool about her is that she is Christopher Plummer's daughter, so she has kind of like, there's expectations about her that when I was first seeing it, I was like, oh, what's she gonna be like? And it's really delightful because she's like very original, but also I was kind of hoping for the over the top kind of villain, but also like not done poorly, and I think she's delivering for me, at least.
Like I think I expected more her quoting Shakespeare, like Chang, but but like we said in some, it would be cool
if she,
but her quote about the tick-tocking of gears and, afternoon in the solar system, which afternoon in the solar system doesn't make sense unless there's a Sol standard time, which actually probably is the case, considering you have numerous, space installations around solar system. They probably have a standard time, so, okay, it's afternoon on Jupiter station is the same as afternoon on Earth Space Dock, for example. But yeah, there's just so much more to her role than just, okay, this is just General Chang, but female. There is more, which I'm loving.
Yeah, me too. But also, she's also I don't know if she'll quote Shakespeare. That'll be awesome if she does. But it would also be cool if she quotes Emily Dickinson or something new.
I don't think even I could quote that. So I can quote some Shakespeare. I've done enough English class and English literature, but yeah.
But I'm very again, I have to be careful about what I talk about, but I have a question for you. What do you think is up with Jack Crusher? She knew Captain Shaw's profile so quickly. She has access to knowledge very quickly.
So
there's
a
lot of little things.
A conspiracy there. As we have Raffi, as we've seen Starfleet intelligence be like, oh yeah, we found it about it. Toluco did it. Just stop investigating, and then realizing, oh, actually, Toluco's dead. Starfleet intelligence didn't even know that, so they pinned it on someone that they have no evidence about. So there is some sort of conspiracy there. Some people have speculated, blue gills, changelings, all these things. We don't really know as of so yet. A lot of people look at the Shrike and say, oh, it looks like a bluegill, the parasite from Conspiracy.
It does look like it, yeah.
But I don't know if I'm convinced by that.
It could also look like a SETI eel. I mean, right?
Yeah, it can look like a lot of things.
A lot of things, it's true.
Yeah, so...
It could also look like a Shrike.
Someone is feeding her information. And she's not a bounty hunter like she claims. That's apparent. But how does it go? How did she steal from Daystrom Station? You have all these questions.
In the chat, Michelle P., what do you think of this? My Jack theory. Because he's Picard's son, he has some Borgishness in his DNA. I mean, look at what happened to Icheb in season 1. So Duck says I bring up the controversial scene.
Which, again, I'm fine with Icheb in season 1. Anyway, Borgishness in his DNA is interesting, but also...
But in addition to that... Oh, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
We know that she's only after Jack Crusher from the fact that they locate his signal on the Ilios and they're trying to beam him up. They don't beam up all three. They only try to beam up Jack. So there's something about Jack. And, you say about the Borgishness in his DNA. The only reason why they were harvesting Borg in season 1 was for their components, not for their DNA. And she's not a bounty hunter. She's not after his bounty. She's not after his Borg parts. There's something more. It might be something related to Picard's DNA, I guess, because...
Well, and it could also be Dr. Crusher's DNA, because the Howards have a weird thing going on with Ronan. The exposure to Ronan gave them weird... Remember, you had to be, compatible for Ronan to, whatever. That's... I know, Sub-Rosa...
Don't make this all connected to Sub-Rosa, no.
But then also Wesley having some sort of extra abilities too, right? Didn't he have something that made him more compatible with being a traveler somehow?
Possibly.
I don't know.
But I think
But that could get a little supernatural.
There is the question because obviously Picard, his original body died in season 1, and he's now a synthetic. He's got a synthetic body, which is flesh and blood. But would the synthetic body, which is still flesh and blood but was built, would it have his DNA in it? Is the question now I'm asking, if they're after Jack Crusher's DNA. Because Jack Crusher could be the only way they get Picard's DNA, because his body's gone and his synthetic body might not be. But
Right. There would be
also
the
in the
synthetic
credits,
version.
in the credits, we see a lot of DNA strands and
Oh,
everything.
DNA references. That's right.
Obviously, I think that's more a reference to just okay, Jack Crusher is DNA connected to Picard. But yeah, that's really all I can think about. But then why would they need it? Is then the question. Because I really don't want it to be like, they need it to make Shinzon 2, but better. That's
Shinzon
kind of weird.
Part 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But speaking of Borgs, before we end, I just want to also say I feel like we did talk about Seven a little, but I just want to say once again, like that whole ending, like there's a lot of components at play, and Seven, I'm gonna call her Starfleet 7, is amazing. Like the whole the showdown between her and Jack Crusher, the like her face lighting up when she also, like, everyone's reactions to Jack being Jean-Luc's son, right, and Beverly's son,
drops
like
the phaser.
being confirmed, like, yeah, that music in that part and everything, but just also like her challenging Shaw was so good. Like that moment where she was like, okay, you could either be known as like the butcher, like the guy who let these heroes die, or the one that actually saves heroes, right? Like, up to you. And like that's like a compelling that's like, she gets like right to the heart of it. And even though they have like a contentious relationship, like it's interesting to see them developing as a first officer and captain. It's a cool thing. Definitely. But I really love Seven a lot, and I think that Jerry Ryan could lead a show. I think she's just phenomenal, and she does all the Star Trek very well.
Yes. So we are over an hour. We will be wrapping up shortly, but if you're in chat, let us know your comments, let us know your questions that you may have for us. We'll finish the poll shortly, so make sure you've voted in the poll for your favorite scene. Yeah. If your favorite scene isn't there, say it in the comments and we'll bring it up, and we'll just go through some quickly. I saw some comments which I do want to bring up. One thing is Tim Jerome saying, ha ha ha, the look from Starfleet Boy's face, I think you're onto something. There, Dom. So if you gave something away, it's your fault.
Wow! Oh no!
CBS snipers will be coming for you.
Oh no!
But no, I think that was just your surprise face, so I think it's fine.
Yeah. Goodness. One must be very careful. I see I'm being analyzed.
Jackanory Biggins says that Vadic is Rufo's. I never know how to pronounce his name. The villain from Insurrection.
Ruafo. You were thinking of Rufio from
I was. But is hunting Jack, and now she has found Picard. But she's talking with Picard, so why is she still after Jack, is my only question. Who the hell are the end of Season 2 threats, the evolved AI people? I think that this end of Season 2 threat, because the timeline of Season 2 and Season 3 are very close together. They're only a couple of months apart. So I think the quantum corridor in Season 2 is probably a way for Matalas to be like, hey, I want a show, give it to me, Paramount, and then I can talk about the quantum tunnel. I think that's it. And then if he gets a future show, he'll be like, oh yeah, remember that tunnel that opened up? Oh yeah, the Dominion 2 are here, or whatever. Do you see any in chat which is coming up? My theory is no, I don't.
The mass minions, like I hope we do get a reveal. My bet is on an avian species. I'm guessing
avian. Yes. The mystery of the mass minions is intriguing. Is it me, or do Vadic's crew look like the protagonist race from Star Trek Bridge Commander? I'm not 100% sure which species that is, but I'll look that up. Who are Vadic's crew? There's a lot of Vadic's crew here. XBs, I have no idea who they may be.
Interesting.
No idea at all. Obviously, we have the...
Riker thought their ashes were interesting, remember?
Yes.
He was like, have you ever seen ashes like this?
We did have Jack Crusher saying, there's a lot of people that's been after us, Klingons, Starfleet, they're changing faces. I personally took that as they were changing ships. Because in the first scene of episode 1, we see them come after them with Alachi ships. That's where the Romulan Free States reference was from. Now I remember. So they had Alachi ships, they might have Klingon ships. We saw a Klingon cloaking device in the end credits. And they might have came to them with Starfleet ships. However, they could have also changed faces. We could also be dealing with Changelings as the actual Changelings, or any other Changeling species. We could have the return of the Changeling from Undiscovered Country, which would be pretty cool.
Martia.
Yes.
Her species.
Though her species, not her, because she blew up, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was shot. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Shapeshifters. Maybe they're holograms, says Botrek. Possibly. There's a lot of different options that they could be. But yeah, I think it's time to end the poll and see what the favorite.
Let's see how we did.
Is. So, well, actually, tell me. Okay, there it is. Favorite part of episode 2, Disengage. At last in this, we have Shrike and Vadic, which I'm kind of sad about but I'm sure we'll get more of them next week with the Nebula scene.
If you think about it, yeah, the episode, the time spent with Shrike and the Vadic was not as much as we did with the other stuff. So yeah.
Raffi and Snead joined with Shrike and Vadic at 15%. So I'm glad we get some Snead love in the chat. Shaw and Titan at 24%, but a clear winner is the Picard and Beverly scene. I do have to anyone in chat who look at. There was a particular post on Twitter, as we brought up previously, of the comparison between that and Encounter at Farpoint. It's just a brilliant comparison.
It is. It's so good,
and it was just such a brilliant scene and so well acted by the two. So I'm glad that won the award for best scene. According to the fine folks in our live stream
also
chat.
So yes. The chat was super fun. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry we couldn't get to everything. It goes by so quickly too.
Really fast.
Very exciting.
I have my phone right here. And yeah, there was a lot. There was no Riker in that poll, so boo. Jill, you could have just said Riker was your favorite scene in the chat. It's all fine. I'll make sure to put Riker in it next live stream.
Speaking of Jonathan Frakes, he directs the next 2 episodes. Yes. So episode 3 and episode 4 are going to be directed by
was
Darren
Arnia Coast.
Doug, sorry, not Darren. Darren, I was mixing poor Doug with another director.
And written by Christopher Monfett and Sean Tretter. It's also worth noting that the chief medical officer, Dr. Oak, who's a Trill of the Titan, is Sean Tretter's wife. So he probably wrote that for her.
I think it's also worth mentioning that Terry Matalas wrote the first episode, and Christopher Monfett and Sean. No, but the previous episode, right?
Yes, yeah.
And Christopher Monfett and Sean Tretter both worked with Terry on developing 12 Monkeys. So the first 2 episodes are very much this tight group of writers who have worked on really great stuff. So I'm very exciting, and it shows. I think also I just want to give them a little bridge clap, because to me, I feel like they've come home to what they've always dreamt about, and you can see.
I also need to bring up. Valamis said, "I do really like how many aliens serve on the Titan," which was a big point of the Titan books, that it was this very diverse ship. Only like 15% of the crew were humans. If you're interested in the original Titan, the Lunar class, we did just put out a video on Trek Central, so you can go check that out.
And I just want to say,
narrated by our great Lieutenant Adam, and yeah, go on.
They're all really cool too. So we haven't really gotten too much of them, but we know that there's Tavine, we know Esmer, we know the bridge crew, of course, LaForge. We're very interested.
Yes,
and Maru, LaForge. I think is the name of the
Lieutenant Matthew Arliss Mura. Yes,
Mira. Thank you.
I know his name off by heart because he's very nice. But
I met him at the premiere. I met all of them actually. They were very sweet.
The actor is Joey something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I one thing I did want to point out, which is why I brought up that comment, was the amount of Orions on the Titan.
Yeah,
there are at least 3. It's just really nice because obviously, you know, Tendi was the first one in Lower Decks, and now 20 years later,
influence, yeah.
There's so many.
That's
so we
cool.
do love to see it. So I think we will be wrapping up. So I hope you all had a nice time in this live stream. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, notification button, all that stuff. Follow us on socials. We have some articles on our website of our review. We don't only put reviews on the channel, but we put it on the website as well. There'll be a Easter egg article by Connor, I think tomorrow. And we should have some other great stuff coming your way. You know, we've got 8 more weeks of Star Trek Picard Season 3, and we will be filling that with so much content, especially as we get into
excited.
The middle of the series, the end of the series. Meeting Geordi, meeting Troy again, all this stuff, finding out all these revelations. We'll be breaking it down week by week, episode by episode. So we thank you very much for your support. Starfleet Boy, do you have any last comments?
Just, I'm so excited to talk about episode 3. I have a little bit of foreknowledge, and I just can't wait to talk about it and hear what you guys think. So,
well, I don't. So I am on the safe wavelength to all of you chat. So no need to be jealous. Yeah, I mean, you can be jealous towards Sahil, but yeah. But yes, it'll be lovely to talk about that with you. You know, Favre is off on the Star Trek cruise, having the time of his life. I think they're in Mexico right now.
He's sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
Yes. And we may have Captain Jack back in a future live stream. He just got off a 24-hour charity live stream raising money for charity. I can't remember the charity it was, but they raised a lot of money, so well done them. He's sleeping now after 24 hours of streaming. But yes, we thank you all for being here. And as always, I've been Commander Dom Paris, and as always, live long and prosper. There we go. Sorry, I had to